What up? What up? What up? Peace and reparations. My conspiracy brother in the house. What's
What up?
happening,
What up?
man? Man, we upping up the ante, man. It's
Yeah,
that time of year, man. What is less
yeah,
than what less than 5 weeks from
yeah,
vote? Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna try to get in early, do my early, do the early voting, man, because I want to sit back and relax and pontificate on the disaster that's gonna happen
Right. One way or the other,
on
right?
election day. We're gonna definitely have an election day. Hopefully we can get our other brothers on it. But for sure, me and Stead,
Yeah.
we definitely gonna be covering the election, man. Um, and that's what brought us today. Stead, you want to tell them what we bringing to them today?
Yeah. So as you can see, so the show is called. It's from that famous James Carville quote, who was a Democratic strategist. He kind of went up the deep end.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
basically, it's the
Oh,
economy, stupid.
it's the
So it's a
economy
look
still.
at the economic plans of the three main political parties, and that being the Green Party, the Democrats, and the Republicans. I would say the Green Party, the Red Party, and the Blue Party. But that is essentially, hey, that is essentially
Hey,
what
what's
it
up,
is.
Krista?
The Green Party, the Red Party, and the Blue Party, we are looking at what is essentially their economic policies, trying to go over their platforms just to try to see, for our community, which political parties make the most sense. Um, we kind of talked about this quite a bit on the show. Generally, that we need to make our decisions off of something substantial, not just either somebody's race or their lack of racial identity as it pertains to our community, and really get into what they're doing. So, Harris Wall's campaign didn't release their platform. I don't want to say maybe like a month out. They didn't release a platform till like a month into
It
things.
was literally like a day before the presidential debate
Yeah,
between Trump and Kamala. Like literally,
yeah,
like there was 2 months into that, and at that point it was 2 months into
okay,
Kamala's campaign. So the day before the actual debate is when we saw the platform actually be posted on her website. She was just collecting donations up until that point.
right.
2 months
And I
in.
mean, I've shown the screenshot from her website where it
Mhm.
just literally said donate, whatever. Like I've shown that
Right.
screenshot before. So, um, but yeah, and I've theorized that she released her platform so that at the debate that could not be a Trump talking
That couldn't
point.
yeah, that couldn't be a talking point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
so I don't know if you want to share your screen first or whatever.
You can go
Um,
ahead, man, because I'm actually
okay.
I'm looking up a remark. So what sparked this conversation specifically was that I've been doing a lot of back and forth on Facebook, on social media, but specifically Facebook. And the question is always posed, first and foremost, we covered last episode, we covered like what's going on with the whole Kamala Harris background, her lineage, heritage background. And of course, those who are solidly in her camp basically are saying it just doesn't matter. And as time is going on, Candace Owens has been doing the research, and as time is going on, more and more concrete things are coming out that is contrary to what Kamala Harris released in her book, as far as who her grandmother is, as far as who her great grandmother was, as well as Donald J. Harris, her father. He also released a essay back in 2019 or 2020 or 2019, and there's a lot of facts being pointed to where who they claim who are their relatives aren't their relatives, and other people are popping up. Anyways, the response comes back to, oh well, well, so what? You gonna go vote for Trump? And of course, as I've already expressed multiple times, both me and Stedman, that we're voting green or what have you. And then you get called sellouts and you want Trump to win. And then the conversation goes into, Trump is so bad for black people, this and this and that. And then, you say, well, then you point out to all of the things that Kamala Harris and Biden have done collectively, in their careers that have harmed black people directly, i.e., holding evidence that could possibly, that did free a black man that was on death row, from creating the prison to pipe the school to prison pipeline, to Biden being against busing and was pro segregation, to the drug wars, to so many different things, like specific things that the Biden and Harris administration collectively or more so, I would say separately, because really, to be honest, Biden really hasn't done that much in his current administration. I would say that would be quote unquote harms to black people, but historically, right? And so then the retort is, Trump's tax. One of their say, well, the Trump, they'll bring up Central Park 5, the article he ran back in the day when the whole Central Park 5 thing was going on in the 80s in New York. And then they also will refer to, well, look at his tax cut. His tax cut had a negative impact. The opportunity zones were negative to black people. This is something he did in his, during his administration, as well as the tax cut, that he did, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, right? That was also a something that negatively impacted black people. So that made me think, of course, I didn't address those on a social media post, because it's that's a very long, you need a more longer format to do that. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at, okay, Harris's tax plan, Trump's tax plan, and his previous tax plan, right, when he was in office, and just really, just take it for what it is, what did harm, what didn't, what are they aiming to do? Will it help? Will it not help? So we want to, combat. We don't want to deal in emotions. We're going to deal in facts, and figures. So that's all. That's the lead up to why we're having this conversation. Why we're even looking into both of their tax plans to see, what is what. Which one is harmful to black people or not.
Okay, and so I have pulled up the Harris Walls platform. So actually, a lot of their information is scant. There's
not a lot of details.
Yeah, they always make sure to bookend their sections with the 2025 agenda, which even CNN has admitted is not Trump's agenda.
It's not Trump's. Yeah. His agenda is Agenda 45, right? 47. Or is it 47?
47. Yeah, and I have that. Right. I have that up too, just for comparison. It's a PDF. Right. It is a PDF, a downloadable PDF that I have up just to give a comparison. But just I'll start reading just these, I guess, with the preamble or whatever. Build an opportunity economy and lower costs for families. Vice President Harris grew up in a middle-class home as the daughter of a working mom. And that, maybe I have a different definition of middle class than most, but her mother was a doctor, researcher, came from a upper class Indian Brahmin family. Her grandfather, her mother's Indian father, was like, what do we say he was? Some type of diplomat.
He was a deputy secretary. Let me go in here. I'll look it up for sure to give us exact. Kamala Harris is. Yeah. Kamala. He was definitely a high-ranking government official. And you have to understand, this is in the 1960s. India only got its independence from the British was post-World War II. So we're talking, I want to say 1947, 47, 48. You know what I mean? Something to that effect, right? 47, 48 is when they got their independence from the Brits. That's when you have the separation between Pakistan and India. That occurred. So for him to be a high-ranking diplomat, high-ranking government official during that era, that meant that he had to have had, these weren't, even his come up as story, right, was probably he was already in those that high, you know, he was already of a we already know that he's of the Brahmin caste because Kamala's mother was of that. The fact that he was able to send one of his daughters, you know, to come, you know, because when her mother came to the United States, she entered a doctorate program. I want to say it was at Stanford or it was somewhere in the West Coast, right? You know what I'm saying? It was I want to say Stanford. That's where she met, you know, her father, right? Because you know what I mean.
It might
Now,
have been Berkeley, but I
was
mean,
it
you
Berkeley,
know,
UCLA, Berkeley?
yeah,
Okay, either or. You know what
Berkeley.
I'm saying? Very highly prestigious, universities, or what have you. And she wasn't doing fast because one, she's not a citizen, right? So you
Right.
know she was, you know what I'm saying. It wasn't no freaking scholarships or nothing. Her father was able to pay because I think she was like 19, 20 something years old.
Yeah, she was born in 38.
Right.
And it says she moved here in 1960, if I'm not mistaken. I got the Wikipedia up, but it said she moved to the U.S. and conducted research at Berkeley. She worked at it was at 19 and 58. So yeah, she wasn't 20 yet. Applied for a master's program in nutrition and endocrinology at UC Berkeley and was accepted. So she was applying for a master's program at 19, had already completed her undergraduate studies.
Right. So it goes on here to say that I'm not even going to try to pronounce this guy's name.
Oh yeah, PV.
Gopalan, right? Was an Indian career civil servant who served the government of Zambia and the government of India. So he was part of the colonial project.
Right.
While director,
as was Gandhi.
Right, exactly. While as director of relief measures and refugees in Zambia, he oversaw the exodus of refugees from South Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, during the Rhodesian Bush War. He later served as advisor to the first president of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, and also as joint secretary of the government of India in the 1960s. Gopalan was a member of the Imperial Secretariat Service and later a Central Secretariat Service officer. His maternal grandfather of the 49th Vice President of the United States. He's the maternal grandfather of Kamala Harris. Yeah, so going on. So yeah, this guy definitely was connected. You know, he was not some struggling, you know what I'm saying, person or came from that was no. Absolutely
And I
not.
mean, and she was her mother was a leading researcher in the study of progesterone and progesterone receptor work in isolating and characterizing the progesterone receptor gene and stimulated advances in breast biology and oncology. So
yeah,
I have videos that I've been attempting to kind of do a deep dive about her family history, but she lived in a very wealthy neighborhood in Montreal. A lot of people. So this whole idea that she grew up middle class, this is an attempt to attack to regular everyday citizens, right? The Republican Party typically doesn't try to make they'll try to do it like in the way they speak or who they are, but George Bush was rich. John McCain came from a military family. His wife was rich. Mitt Romney is rich. You know what I'm saying? They don't run from wealth because they consider that a quintessential opportunity that American citizenship brings is the opportunity to gain wealth. But you find that from the Democratic Party, they try to hide from wealth or opportunity while they still have those same connections within their backgrounds via the Bushes, the Obamas. Obama received a $500,000 gift from his grandparents.
Right.
So, what average black person do you know is receiving a $500,000 gift? That ain't a life insurance policy.
Oh, check this out, man. I don't want to going through his Wikipedia. He talks about him and his wife. They had 4 children. The oldest being Kamala. This was Kamala's mother, right? So the couple had 4 children. The oldest, a daughter, Shamala, who earned a PhD in endocrinology. I think that's what, cancer, or that's
Yeah.
Anyways,
Endocrinology is like
endocrinology. What is that?
Yeah, that's like your pancreas and all that, like
Okay, that
dealing with those things. Yeah,
at the
and
University of
hormones, if I'm not
California,
mistaken.
Berkeley. Went on to have an academic and research career in the U.S. and Canada. Now the son was named Balasharanaran, who received a PhD. So the son, so the oldest daughter received a PhD. The one after her was a son. He received a PhD in economics and computer science from the University of Wisconsin Madison. So now he done sent 2 kids. That's 2. Who received a PhD in economics and computer science, medicine, and returned to an academic career in India. A daughter, Sarala, an obstetrician who practiced in Chennai, and the youngest, another daughter, starts with the M. I'm gonna butcher these names. An information scientist who worked for the government of Ontario, Canada. So all 4 of his children earned either doctorates or very high level degrees. All 4. 4 for 4. You know what I'm saying? How many Freedmen, stories do you have of that? Maybe one doctor, bro. Like my mom was like, out of the 12 kids that my grandparents on my mother's side, since we're gonna do let's do a straight comparison, right? Maternal side, there was 12 of them. 11 lived to adulthood. Of those 12, I want to say 3 actually earned some forms of higher education. One of them did become a doctor. I do have a doctor. We had a doctor in one of my uncles was a doctor. But not in medicine. My mother, got her master's. She got her bachelor's and master's degree in social work. You know what I'm saying? So that's 3 out of 12. You know, and I'm 3 out of 11. You know what I'm saying? That has some higher levels of education. Most freedmen, you know what I'm saying? You still got people talking about they're just now got somebody went to college for the first time. In our age and even younger. You know what I mean? Because you're like about 10 years younger than me. So, you know what I mean? That still is a noteworthy thing that, you know what I'm saying? So she is like, you know what I'm saying? Her family, she's like 2nd, 3rd generation of people that are, that have had these types of pedigrees. But she's going to try to say she's middle class. Now, maybe upper middle class, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, she's not of the landed gentry, you know what I mean? She's
not in America, maybe.
Yeah, I'm saying she's not
in India.
Maybe in India. Who knows how much property they own in India, right?
Yeah.
Who knows where they came from? If they weren't royalty or they had some sort of, what I mean, being that they are that high Brahmin. Anyways, we're kind of going on a tangent. But the point, the point being is that, you know what I'm saying, middle class is a stretch from what we think of middle class.
Right. And so it says that's why, as president, Kamala Harris will create an opportunity economy where everyone has a chance to compete and a chance to succeed, whether they live in a rural area, small town, or big city. And like when we were talking yesterday, you said this. How is an opportunity economy any different than an opportunity zone? You know what I'm saying? This is not tailored to address the specific needs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we don't even consider that you have a specific reparations issue with the Citizen Freedmen. Right. You don't even address the specific needs of the low income and poor people who live in this country,
the working class, because by far, and this is a critique that Sabi Sabs gave, and please check out her channel. She does amazing and good work. Notice how we're not talking about, because most people fall under the working class, the working poor, or the working class, the middle class. Okay, in truth, really, if we really take the real numbers, the middle class is who her people are from. Oh, doctors, lawyers, that's the middle class. High technicians. We've mythologized the middle class, and everybody feels like they part of the middle class when they really aren't. You know what I mean? If you're not earning, upwards of like, 100,000 and more, you really aren't part of the middle class. To be honest, you're part of the working class. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Irregardless of what type of field that you're in, if it requires a degree or not, if it's a trade or not, you know what I mean? If you're not really earning, 100 grand or more in this country, and honestly, with taxes, that throws you back into the working class once you take taxes. Believe me, I'm one of those type of people. You know what I'm saying? Taxes will kill you. You know what I mean? So truthfully, if you're not part of the executive C-suite, those type of individuals or what have you, or you have a business, you know what I mean, that can, get you in that type of, wealth or whatever. Let's say, let me go and even say net. If you aren't netting between 100 to 200,000 a year, you know what I mean, then you really aren't part of the middle class. But everybody wants to believe they're part of the middle class. And then that's what she's, just like her being, a freedman, right? Or a Black American, how she's, cosplaying as that. She's also, and building on people's emotions and things of that nature of her being one of us. It's the same thing with this middle class thing. The fact that she's not addressing the main thing she could address, that would help the working class out would be the minimum wage. The federal minimum wage is $7 something. Some estimates it should be up to 25. You know what I mean? To be truthfully, because this is the most expensive country in the world to live in. So, notice she doesn't talk about any of this. But anyways, keep on going through, bro. Okay.
Vice President Harris has made clear that building up the middle class will be a defining goal of her presidency. That's why she will make it a top priority to bring down costs and increase economic security for all Americans. As president, she will fight to cut taxes for more than 100 million working and middle class Americans. While lowering the cost of everyday needs like healthcare, housing, and groceries, she will bring together organized labor and workers, small business owners, entrepreneurs, and American companies to create good paying jobs, grow the economy, and ensure that America continues to lead the world. And again, all that is really pie in the sky. We don't have a system that allows for price controls to work without taking full control of the economy. You know what I'm saying? The government cannot impose a price control structure without mandating penalties and other things that we don't have. We don't have that type of economy. You know what I'm saying? It's not a plan. It's not a completely planned economy. Right. So China could do something like that because China controls their economy from top to bottom.
Right.
But the United States, if you would try to implement price controls, all the companies would do is pass the price controls on to the consumer.
Right.
Or they would stop producing those goods, and then you'd be,
now you're dealing with, shortages and things of that nature. I think the last time that price controls were ever done from a presidential, I think it was Nixon. Nixon did it,
right?
And it didn't turn out well. Actually, inflation actually increased. Prices went up or what have you, and that was abandoned. In a capitalist society, price. I mean, like you said, man, this is just like you said, pie in the sky. Just something to say. You know what I mean? It sounds good. It's good for a campaign to get votes, but in reality, can any of this occur? You saw the word salad that she gave when she was asked about, some of these measures, on the MSNBC interview. It's just because it's just BS, man.
So here she says cuts for middle class families, and as you said, the middle class has shifted so much due to the cost of living increases and inflation that, I mean, if you're not making at least 100,000, maybe high 90s, high 90s,
and we can talk, and I really have to say net because you know what I mean. You're not, because in actuality, because how much more things cost. Companies, corporations, you know what I mean? Like, for instance, when I was working at General Motors, I had health insurance, but my deductibles were $6,000 something, man, before it started paying 100%. You know what I mean? Everything is being shifted back towards the worker and them, you know what I mean? There's no more pensions anymore, right? It's all 401ks, and that's up to the economy, right? Or how that'll look. if you know be
Right.
you know people having to work longer because hey, economic, you know, because you know based capitalism produces downturns about every 4, 5, 6, 7 years or so.
Yeah.
What happens if you're about to retire and you need a certain amount to live off on, and then your 401k takes a big hit because all the stocks, you know, there's a stocks take a hit. You know what I mean? That's going, you know, there was a lot of people that was in that situation in 2008. You know what I
Right.
mean?
I know people who said their 401ks were cut by half,
Right.
you know.
You know what I'm saying?
And you, like you said, there's nothing you can do to get that money back.
No,
Even if the economy picks back up, the chances that you'd make back half in any type of time, unless you had, you know, significant amounts of time to work, and
right.
even in that case, you'd still be just back to where you were,
Back to
you
where
know,
you
when
were.
you started.
A lot of these people having to stay in the economy working, or you know what I'm saying, go back and take a part-time job. You know what I'm saying? You know,
Right.
there's plenty of stories of elder people in their 70s and 80s freaking working at Walmart or whatever little job. Retirement is terrible, and most people don't have any money saved at all, myself included. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Right.
it's yeah, bro. It's really tough out here. A lot of us don't recognize it's because you have a job, you have a house, you have a car. They think they're middle class, and it's like, no, middle class is not what you think it is. Honestly, we're working class. You know what I mean? Because they say most Americans cannot, deal with a $500-$400 emergency. You know what I'm saying? Most Americans can't. You know what I mean? So if you count yourself in that, you definitely not middle class.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? You're not middle
Right.
class at all. But notice how she's not saying anything about that. You know what I mean? She's not talking about the working class because the fundamentally the things that have to change in order to really shore up this economy for most people in the economy would cause drastic changes, like reparations, right? Like increasing the federal minimum wage, creating more law, creating more social safety nets, right? Which are politically unpopular,
Right.
very
And
politically unpopular to be able to do. You know what I mean? But go ahead.
you'd have to close a lot of the tax loopholes and financial
Exactly.
loopholes that allow for corporations and wealthy people to offshore money, to hide money, to defer money. Because, like you hear, Steve Jobs only took a dollar salary when he was the CEO of Apple, but he
Mhm.
had all of his compensation in the form of stocks
Stocks, yeah, stock options and things of that nature.
yeah, and securities, and that's
Hmm.
taxed at 15%.
Right.
So, I mean, he's not doing this out of some benevolence, or even when they said Trump was only receiving a dollar.
Hmm.
Now, it'd be he did for him. He probably didn't need the $400,000 that a president makes. So,
Hmm. Right.
I don't know if that money, what he did with it or whatever. That's a public versus private sector job. It wasn't like he
Mhm.
had that deferred somewhere, but it means a little different when you're in a public sector job and you don't have some opportunity to have something in stock versus you're still being compensated in a private sector job, and you're receiving a salary in some of the form of lower tax compensation. This is the kind of things that would need to happen. But it says cut taxes from middle class families, which, as we've said, the majority of us, overwhelmingly majority of us, are working poor. Vice President Harris and Governor Walz believe that working families deserve a break. That's why, under their plan, more than 100 million working and middle class Americans will get a tax cut. There's estimated to be about 300 million people, maybe 315 to 325 million people in this country. So a third, approximately one third. And we already know the majority of us are working poor. So you're not even helping the majority of the working poor by your own estimation. We haven't even dissected any of this yet. We're
Hmm.
just looking at your estimation of your plan. You're automatically starting out behind the eight ball. But it says they will do this by restoring two tax cuts designed to help middle class and working Americans: the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. Through these two programs, millions of Americans will get to keep more of their hard-earned income. They will also expand the child tax credit to provide a $6,000 tax cut to families with newborn children. They believe no child in America should live in poverty, and these actions would have a historic impact. Um, this does nothing for people who don't have kids, the earned income tax credit. I do my own taxes online because it's free.
Mm-hmm.
But the earned income tax credit, I forget what that even does because I don't qualify for it. Because you can still get it, but you have to qualify. So it's not something anymore that is, I don't know. I don't remember when it ever was. Everyone was entitled to it, but a $6,000 tax cut for newborns, it can cost $6,000 to have a baby. After insurance, you can pay $6,000 to have a baby.
Right.
So that could be gone. And she keeps talking about strollers and car seats and all this stuff. Just it's nonsensical.
Right. Just the deductible itself could be that. Just you know what I'm saying.
Right.
And mind you, that's just newborn. So if you got children, you have existing children. Like I have a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old. You know what I mean? That's not helping me out at all.
Right. Because I got 3, 6, and 9. So yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That does nothing for me. My children are already here.
Right.
So I mean, if anything, the costs increase as they age.
Exactly.
Unlike Donald Trump, Vice President Harris and Governor Walz are committed to ensuring that no one earning less than $400,000. That's the 1%. Just so we can be clear.
Yeah.
Making that type of money a year is the 1%. Who is going to pay more taxes?
Right.
If the 1% isn't even going to be paying more taxes, where's this money coming from? Right? The ultra wealthy? Are we expected to believe that you are going to be trying to hold the very people who fund your campaigns accountable in the tax, in a new tax system? Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. Come on now.
Mm-hmm.
They believe that we need to chart a new way forward by both making our tax system fairer and prioritizing investment and innovation. They will ensure the wealthiest Americans and the largest corporations pay their fair share. It doesn't explain how, so we can take action to build up the middle class while reducing the deficit. This includes rolling back Trump's tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. Why hasn't Biden done that yet? Enacting a billionaire minimum tax. Why hasn't Biden done any of this yet?
Well,
quadrupling the tax.
Well, here's the thing. When we go into some of the videos, it talks about the comparisons or what have you. So the tax cut that was passed by Donald Trump, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act,
right?
That's due to phase out in year 2025 anyway. So that's one of the reasons why, because you need Congress to do that. You know what I mean? Like you just can't. Well, it's not through executive order, right? So you need Congress to do it. Oh, I can see what you're saying. Like, why haven't they tried to, go to
right? But if it's just so easy.
But it's split. That's why they don't own Congress. You know what I'm saying? They don't have Congress.
And she has no way to guarantee,
right?
Even if she's elected, that they will.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So she's talking as if this stuff, like even since you brought up the MSNBC interview, when the interviewer said, well, what happens if this doesn't happen? And she said, well, it's got to. And it's like, what do you mean? What do you mean it's got to happen? You know what I'm saying? It hasn't been happening. Even if you say, well, with the border stuff, Trump made a call. Let's say that's true. What's to stop Trump from making another call? What's to stop some Republican somewhere from saying, you know what? We don't really care how the American people have to deal with daily life. We want you to have a terrible time as president. So we're not going to do anything to work with you at all. You know what I'm saying? Like she's just that's what I meant more so than saying, it's Biden's fault. I'm just saying what makes it so easy for you to do it that it's not easy for Biden to do it, or the Biden administration.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Enacting a billionaire minimum tax, quadrupling the tax on stock buybacks, and other reforms to ensure the very wealthy are playing by the same rules as the middle class. Under her plan, the tax rate on long-term capital gains for those earning $1 million a year or more will be 28%. Still under what we pay as working individuals, because when the government encourages investment, it leads to broad-based economic growth and creates jobs, which make our economy stronger. So you want to select the next one we read, or do you want to try to go down the list for a couple of them? Or
you said what now? Do you want me to?
Yeah. So I got the next ones on this list of her economy or her economic section.
Do you want to go ahead and cover what Trump was on Trump's site?
We can, unless you wanted to. So I'll just read the next headings for you in case you want to see when it pops out. Make
Okay.
rent more affordable and home ownership more attainable. Grow small business and investment in entrepreneurs. Take on bad actors and bring down costs. Strengthen and bring down the cost of healthcare. Protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare. Support American innovation and workers. Provide a pathway to the middle class through quality, affordable education. Invest in affordable child care and long-term care. Lower energy costs and tackle the climate crisis. Any of those stick out you want to address or read about?
No, that's okay, man. Because we're gonna cover a lot of this in the videos.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want me to go to Trump's?
Yeah, you can go ahead and go to Trump's.
Okay. So here is the GOP platform, Make America Great Again. And it's funny because like his stuff is real cheap. That's one thing I can say that I noticed about him relative to a lot of other political campaigns. His stuff is super cheap. Like his Make America Great Again hats are super cheap. And his websites and stuff, like he don't really invest a lot of money in any of that.
He don't put no razzle dazzle in his presentation.
Nothing, bro. Nothing. So the table of contents: defeat inflation and quickly bring down all costs. It's only 16 pages, and the table of contents is on page 6. So all the other stuff. Let's see what it says. Page 1 is the preamble. So
you want to go down let's go to the economic.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. But so I think that's, let's see. Yeah, so it looks like the first page, or the first, not first page, but it looks like it'll be page 7. Protect American workers and farmers from unfair trade, protect seniors, cultivate great K-12 schools leading to great jobs and great lives for young people, bring common sense to our government of, by, for the people, return to peace through strength, bring back the American dream and make it affordable again for families and young people. So inflation is the first page, the border is the second page, or the second page as far as the table of contents. 3 is the greatest economy in history. 4 is the American dream. Which one would you think fits better? The bring back the American dream and make it affordable, the greatest economy, or defeat inflation?
I guess make it affordable. Number 4, I guess.
Yeah, man, his stuff is you ain't got to go through a lot to read his stuff. Bring back the American dream and make it affordable. Our commitment. Republicans offer a plan to make the American. Am I showing it? Is it sharing?
Yeah, it's just showing. It's showing. You probably want to make it a little bit larger. If you can maybe go to 120. Yeah, that's good.
So, yeah, I'll close that. So, Republicans offer a plan to make the American dream affordable again. We commit to reducing housing, education, and healthcare costs while lowering everyday expenses and increasing opportunities. Housing affordability: to help new home buyers, Republicans will reduce mortgage rates by slashing inflation, open limited portions of federal lands to allow for new home construction, promote home ownership through tax incentives, and support for first-time buyers, and cut unnecessary regulations that raise housing costs. And this again is like, it's a lot of it is BS, because you can't just cut inflation. You know what I'm saying? If you could just cut inflation, Biden would do it because that's killing him. You know what I'm saying? As brain dead as he is, if inflation was lower even than when Trump was president, Biden would still be running. You know what I'm saying? People would be behind Biden
big time.
I still wouldn't support him vocally, but I at least would not be antagonistic to him and his party. Open limited portions of federal lands to allow for new home construction. This, I think, I don't know how you feel about it.
I think that's that's crazy.
Well, yeah, because I mean, when you really think
federal
about
lands, like, what are you talking about? Yosemite? We're gonna go to Yosemite and put some housing units up. Like,
yeah, because like we have a lot of land here that is already, like, you just look at Detroit. Since I watched that video you sent where it was talking about houses, there's a lot of vacant land in Detroit. Yeah, that you could build houses and build new construction. I mean, just lots and lots and lots of land.
Lots of
all over the country. There's like land like that in cities that have already been developed.
Right.
There are homes.
They got the sewer lines. They got the roads.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everything. You know what I'm saying? You see, again, trying to do it with tax cuts and rebates and And no, you need straight up investment with the government, borrowing money or creating money, borrowing or whatever. That's what happened post World War II. You know what I mean? Like, it was money. That's how his father got rich. Fred Trump got rich making building houses and housing developments off of the federal government. The federal government was giving out loans to these builders, as well as they was giving loans to the people to buy the homes. And that's why you saw of course they weren't doing it for our people. We got cut out of all of that. You know what I mean? They redlined our areas to get government money and government loans or what have you. But that's how you do it. If you want to, you know what I'm saying? Very few times tax incentives are going to drive like growth, because that's hoping that you're going to, like, the conditions in themselves are favorable for you to even do so. If not, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like, if it doesn't make economic sense to build in this particular area where you can charge market rate, you know what I mean, then you won't have it happen. You won't see it happen. Only to when the environment is desirable for private money to go in to make money. Now, yeah, will they use these tax incentives as part of, you know what I'm saying, part of the equation, and to whether or not they do a deal or not? Yes, it's true. You know what I'm saying? But it only goes so far. Really, if you want to see a boom all throughout the country, you're going to have to put money, loans and grants, you know what I'm saying, at very cheap rates to see, like, okay, now this is going to, you know what I'm saying, I can borrow, I can get access to this to buy equipment and things like that. When you talk about a tax deduction, or, you know what I mean, you're basically saying, hey, after you've done this, at the end of the year, you know what I'm saying, then you can, you know what I mean, basically you're going to get what you paid for, what you paid your equipment, basically going to be free, because we're going to give you the money on the back end. But that's assuming that you had the money in the first place to buy the equipment, to hire the people and things of that nature, right? You know what I mean? That's making a big assumption. And that's what we're going to cover and talk about. But go ahead, Stead.
But yeah, what all this really sounds like to me, and I'm sure you would agree, is some attempt to rework Reaganomics, trickle down and all that stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? This because essentially neoliberal economic policy is built on this idea that if you give the money to the people at the top, it will come down to the people on the bottom somehow. I don't get how they it has never worked. I don't get how they think that works. Even with pyramid schemes, that's not how it works.
Nope.
You still need the people on the bottom to support the structure up top. You always need new sources of income. So I don't see how they think the top can support the bottom. It just doesn't make sense.
It goes back to that Chicago school. So you have, like, if you ever, at a semblance of an economics course, you had the Keynesian economic model, where it was like, demand pushes the demand side economics. And then later on, you had the cats like Friedman and all of them coming out of the University of Chicago that was talking about supply side. You know what I'm saying? Supply side economics. So the demand side, just, quick, cliff notes, demand side Keynesian was an economist, during like the World War II era or what have you, that basically said, hey, you get people money in their pockets, you know what I'm saying? You put money in the pockets of the people, they're going to spend that money, right? You know what I mean? So that's going to drive the economy, because now that would create entrepreneurs, business people looking to meet that demand. You know what I mean? And then you'll see an expansion. The supply guy said, and this went on, his version of economics drove U.S. policy for a long period of time. Then by the 60s and 70s, right? The cost of work, the cost of doing business went up, because hey, you got to pay people more salaries, things of that nature, and they look to a way to try to cut all of that. So in the 70s, it switched to supply side economics, where they're saying like, hey, we need to drive down the cost of supply, the cost of what it costs to make a good, whether it be, you know, the materials, the labor and things of that nature. You know what I mean? Therefore, you know, you can have more profit at the end of the day because your costs have been reduced. And that's been, you know, been going on in our society and our economy since the 70s. You know what I'm saying? Really, that's been all it. Driving down costs either through automation, technology, shipping jobs overseas to cheaper labor markets, things of that nature. And that's why we've gone from a country that used to produce a lot of goods and goods to now we're pretty much a service economy. You know what I mean? Information economy, service economy, or what have you. And the problem with that is that, hey, you saw in COVID, because everything was produced even mass, they were, you know, they had to scramble to produce mass, right? Simple things as mask and medical equipment, because so much of our supply was, you know, dealt in overseas. Because once China started shutting down, you know what I mean, because they became the workshop of the world. That was a distinct economic policy that the guy that came after Mao, Mao Zedong, he specifically, you know, was like, that's going to be our rise to fame. We're going to be the world's workshop, right? We're going to produce, you know, most of the goods for the world at a very cheap rate, you know what I mean? And, you know, but they still are communists. They're not democratic, but their economy is based on capitalistic principles. So anyway, and, you know, and now, unless you're like in a very high skill type of, you know, labor that can demand, you know, the certain amount of money, that drove all wages across over the board down. You know what I mean? And now, you know, people are living off, you know, check to check, credit card, things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? The simple thing is that people aren't getting paid enough to be able to, you know, to meet the needs, their basic needs, let alone, you know, other needs, you know, extravagant needs and luxury and things of that nature, right? Like that's the real crutch of the issue. And neither one of these parties are going to address that because they're in the pockets of corporations, of the business people and the high donors, the ones of the top 1%, you know what I'm saying, who are able to make, you know, the big monies and support their campaigns and things of that nature. That's why we said we are in a fascist state already, based on how things are, you know, currently operating in this political economy. We're already there, where the big money, the people with the big money, you know, call the shots. They got rid of a lot of regulations that prevented consolidation of certain sectors. You know what I'm saying? The Republicans and the Democrats did this, man. There's no difference.
Right.
But anyways, go ahead, bro.
Well, yeah. No, you summed up a lot of the points that I wanted to make. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is where we are. And so without the Republicans being able to acknowledge any of the root causes of these problems, all these will be papering over the actual causes of these problems. Mm-hmm. So it's accessible higher education. To reduce the cost of higher education, Republicans will support the creation of additional, drastically more affordable alternatives to traditional four-year college degree. Now, this is not a bad idea to make trade schools and vocational training more accessible and affordable. But what is going to happen then is the market is going to become oversaturated, and you'll eventually drive down the wages, the labor,
right?
Because everybody's going to have a vocational degree, and you're not going to have enough teachers or whatever who have gone to traditional four-year colleges and universities. So this is a situation we're in at either hand, because nobody's trying to address the root cause of these issues. Like people always say, you know, Kennedy cut taxes when he was president. He cut taxes. Trying to say this, you know, about Democrats, but Kennedy cut corporate taxes from like 96%, which is what they were, to like 75%. And so what those kinds of things did was to incentivize corporations to reinvest the money in their workers and in their businesses. So that's how a lot of maybe not our parents, but maybe our grandparents or some uncles got to go to school for free, being paid for by their jobs. right? Because the job would get a tax break from funding their own employees' higher education or continued education.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, a lot of boomers had been able to take advantage of that doesn't get talked about a lot. When you look
as well as at the time they were public education, these universities and community colleges or what have you, the state legislatures were also, giving a lot more money to those systems.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? They were funding them. So like they weren't barely even paying anything to go to school. You know what I mean? Because the cost wasn't that much, but over the years, the state legislators kept dropping the amount of money that they were putting into these state university systems and community colleges or whatever. And guess who had to pick up the brunt? There was the people. They was like, you know what? They decided they were going to make a business out of loaning money for people to go to get higher education. So much so they passed it where you can never get. That's the only type of debt you can't get rid of in bankruptcy.
Right.
So much so they decided to make it a profit, driven industry, and so now you got a disconnect between what people can afford and what they get charging, and then we're not even talking about with all of the collegiate sports and how that also had a big impact on a lot of these schools increasing their tuition to cover for these new cover for paying these coaches. Creating all these facilities, these high-tech facilities or what have you, you know what I mean? So that's also a big driver in cost. And then too, like I said, hey, you go ahead and, we can continuously increase tuition way beyond inflation. Guess what? You know what I'm saying? Because guess what? They're going to get a loan for it. You know what I'm saying? Right. They're going to get a loan for it anyway. So they can, so the elasticity of what they are able to charge versus what the people are able to pay was blunted because of the college loan industry, right? You know what I'm saying? So, so there's a disconnect, you know what I mean? And it's just, it's crazy, bro.
Okay. So let's see. Affordable healthcare. Healthcare and prescription drugs costs are out of control. Republicans will increase transparency, promote choice and competition, and expand access to new affordable healthcare and prescription drug options. We will protect Medicare and ensure seniors receive the care they need without being burdened by excessive costs. Now, again, without detail. No detail in really any of this. This is, if this was if this was a paper somebody was writing, in high school or college, you say, hey, if I want you to develop a political platform, this would probably fail. But right. Without price controls, how do you do any of this? Now, I think transparency is great. That if you could mandate that you go to a doctor's office or a hospital visit, and there's a price list so that you can see how much your visit costs, so that you can compare. But I mean, if you're in an emergency room situation, if you're shot, stabbed, bleeding profusely, you don't have time to run around and find the cheapest emergency room either way. So that's not, that's not going to be something that moves the needle when emergency care is some of the more expensive care that you find. And a lot of emergency rooms aren't even attached to the hospitals that they're inside of. Those are private equity that controls. We talked about that on the show. Private equity controls a lot of emergency rooms. And it says we will protect Medicare and ensure seniors receive the care they need without being burdened by excessive costs. He's saying this because Republicans are notorious for trying to end Medicare and Social Security, privatize Medicare and Social Security. And so this is just trying to say that they are not going to do this, I guess, without saying they're not going to do it, because protecting it will at least make you believe that he's saying they're not going to privatize it.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean
right. Right. Because the Republicans, since the inception of Medicare and Social Security, have tried, in many failed attempts to take it over, but it's such a popular program, you know what I mean? It's not going to happen, and as well as that voting demographic is like one of the strongest voting demographics out there. You know what I mean? They come to vote, unlike young people and
right,
and certain minorities.
Which is why they get a lot of what they want.
Right, they get what they want. You know what I mean?
And again, here, promoting choice and competition. Unless they're allowing American citizens to purchase drugs from foreign countries, who have similar regulatory, at least similar regulatory laws and things,
Well,
you're not going to be so.
Well, for one of the reasons why is because they have a national health care system, right? That can bargain the demand that these private companies, pay. They only pay so much. You know what I mean? Right. These exorbitant fees that they're charging way beyond, 2, 3, hundreds of times past what it costs to do the R&D for the drug. You know what I mean? Biden and them did successfully get, like, I want to say 17 drugs. They were able to do collective bargaining through Medicare. But that's 17 out of thousands.
You still have to have Medicare for that to be
right. You got to still have, exactly. You got to have Medicare to be able to do that. You know what I'm saying? And that's why, what will really deal with this is that we have one payer system. That because a lot of costs that is overhead with all these different health insurance companies, billing, that's a whole thing. You could get into medical billing, right? That's an actual field. That's because it's so complicated because of all the different types of people, and it's just overhead, that could be reduced and streamlined if we had a one payer system or a national healthcare system. But again, that's what Bernie was talking about. And that lasted for what, one election cycle? Now, now is, right. Which, Kamala was for when it was hot. Now, all of a sudden, she's not for Medicare for all. You know what I'm saying? Right. You know what I mean? We know the Republicans are for that. That's why I'm saying these two parties are just the same, bro. One's like far right, and then the Democrats are like center right. You know what I mean? There really is no truly left progressive party in this country outside of the Green Party, and they're a people party. You know what I'm saying? They don't have the, the same economic. They don't have the ability. They don't have media. You know what I'm saying? Because all the media is corporate owned. Again, that was Glass-Steagall Act. Thanks Clinton for that. Anyway, right.
Let's see. Last bullet point, and this is the last one about this topic. Lower everyday costs. Republicans reduce the regulatory burden, lower energy costs, and promote economic policies that drive down the cost of living and prices for everyday goods and services. And again, no explanation as to how that will happen. Republicans love. Okay.
Go ahead, bro. Go. No, I saw something that was saying like we are exporting oil at a huge amount. You know what I'm saying? The U.S. is. We are independent of foreign oil already. Oil right now is being traded at $35 a barrel. How can we make it? How will it be any lower than what it is right now? And if we chose to pump out more oil, the other OPEC countries and things of that nature, you got to understand, like, not all this is in our hands, right? You know what I mean? Venezuela pumps oil. Obviously, the OPEC nations pumps oil. They'll reduce pumping to increase the oil the price of oil, right, per barrel. You know what I mean? And then we're right back at it. You know what I'm saying? So, like, this whole idea is we're going to drill ourselves out of this is kind of ridiculous because we're already at a maximum, some of our maximum capacity of drilling right now. We're drilling way more than we've ever done historically. So, like, I don't think that's going to lower energy costs.
It was either Sean Fu, who I was telling you about yesterday, or it was Michael Hudson. It was a Michael Hudson video, who's an economist. And they were saying that the issue, I think it was Michael Hudson, he was talking about the war with Iran and why it's such a big deal for the U.S. to have control in the Middle East. And they were saying that this is the reason. If they can control Iranian oil, Syrian oil, if they can control Middle East oil and the goings on there, they can control who those countries trade with and global oil demand and prices. And so this is essentially what's at the bottom of these conflicts in the Middle East, right? We see the ways that our government destabilizes these countries' governments. This is why, because they talk about regulatory burden, but as far as developed nations, we probably have the least regulations out of all of them, out of all Western European nations, Japan, South Korea, Canada. We do things in America that you're not allowed to do in a fully industrialized or post-industrialized nation. And so, I mean, I was watching a video, or I saved it to my playlist earlier today, we was talking about how child labor has quietly been legalized in the United States and nobody's talking about it. And I can remember they were saying in Florida or somewhere, maybe the last couple of years, that they had legalized child labor to some degree. I think they had to be 16 or something, and they took away the work restrictions on hours or something like that. But I mean, we're going back literally to like turn of the century, the jungle up to St. Clair,
the Gilded Age.
Right.
That's what
right.
we're going
That's
back
essentially
to,
where we are.
The age, you know, the age of the Rockefellers and U.S. Standard Oil, and you know the deregulated
Carnegie
market,
and
you know what I'm saying, you know, pre-unions and things of that nature. Like that's what we're going back to, man. You know what I'm saying? That this gap between the haves and have-nots, you know, this oligarchy of rich business people and families, you know what I'm saying, controlling most and everything. You know, and all economies and walks of life. That's what we're going back to. That's, you know what I mean? That's, you know, because they've rolled back to all those measures that, you know, came during, you know, the first Roosevelt era, during Teddy Roosevelt, you know what I mean, and subsequent with through FDR, you know what I'm saying? You know, we're rolling all those things, all those measures and protections have been rolled back. You know what I'm saying? That kind of boistered against, you know, these monopolies and these big businesses, you know, having such a control and demand over everyday life.
Yeah. So that's the end of that segment for the Trump campaign. So again, there's not much information. He doesn't even mention the working class at all. You know, these are your two mainstream options, your two major options. Make the American dream affordable for young families, or families and young people and everyone. That's, you know, that's it. I don't know. You want me to go to the Green Party? You want to open up something?
Yeah,
the Green Party stuff is really long. So
yeah, we can do that on a different day. We're already an hour or so into it. I have a phone call I have to take at 4:30. Okay. So yeah, let's get going to some of the what people are saying. So let me share my screen real quick.
Okay. I'll pull it up when you
share
get it up. I'll take mine up. But yeah, I mean, this is essentially the situation in a nutshell. You have two bad, vapid options. Here, I'll pull it up.
Okay. Let me know when you can hear the audio. Can you hear the audio?
Nope.
No? Okay, let me stop sharing.
No, not yet.
Let me go back to present, share. It says share audio. Also, entire screen. Oh, okay, that's what I didn't do.
On one track, Trump has proposed roughly $2 trillion more in tax cuts than Harris, and would impose major tariffs on imported goods, which could help pay for those cuts. On the opposite track, Harris would cut taxes for households that make under $400,000 and would raise taxes on corporations and the rich. This is how Trump's plan could work. Trump is borrowing much of his tax policy plans from his previous stint in the White House. He wants to extend the tax cuts he signed into law in 2017. The tax bill from 2017 made a number of changes, including lower tax rates, an increased standard deduction, and doubling the child tax credit. But those changes for households are set to expire at the end of 2025. The tax cuts Trump has proposed on the 2024 campaign trail could come at a heavy cost, more than $6.5 trillion over 10 years. Extending the tax cuts past 2025 could end up costing the federal government more than $4 trillion over a decade. Trump recently proposed a lower corporate tax rate of 15% that would only apply to companies that make products in the U.S., estimated to reduce federal revenue by $200 billion over the next decade.
And a reduction in the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%, solely for companies that make their product in America.
Trump has suggested eliminating the income tax on Social Security benefits. In 2022, almost half of Social Security recipients paid those taxes.
There will be no tax on Social Security. We're going to stop it. No tax on Social Security.
Ending income taxes on Social Security benefits could cost the federal government as much as $1.8 trillion in revenue over a decade. By one estimate, ending those taxes would cause the
That's really not a lot. 1.8 trillion over a decade.
Right. Well,
That's
I mean, and I think about, on the one hand, you want to say about fiscal responsibility or whatever, but you've given Israel and Ukraine like $250 billion. They never pay U.S. taxes. They're not a U.S. protectorate in any formal way. I know we have security agreements, but what I'm talking about is like the way that a state is or the way that a U.S. territory is.
Territory,
and so, I mean, you've given them $250 billion, and I don't know if that includes weapons and other aid. I think that might just be cash money between those two places. I mean, they signed Obama, when he was in office, I think in 2013, signed a $30 billion over 10-year agreement to fund Israel. You know what I'm saying? Detroit only needed $18 billion, and we helped the United States win World War II. You know what I'm saying? You can give us $18 billion. You give Israel 13. Detroit would have took $18 billion over 6 years, $3 billion a year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
So, the cost loss or the revenue loss to the federal government, when you're spending the amounts of money that we're spending for foreign incursions or whatever, it makes it hard to justify any of these considerations at home for us.
Yeah, let's get back to it real quick.
Social Security fund to become insolvent 1 year earlier than previously forecast.
This is a proposal that's really targeted to largely retirees and people, not very, very, very wealthy retirees, but people who are kind of well off enough to have some other source of income just besides Social Security. Harris is running in a different direction, cutting taxes on middle income families, lower income families, and raising taxes pretty sharply on high income households and on corporations.
Kamala Harris has largely adopted President Joe Biden's plan, which has fewer cuts compared to Trump's, costing about $4 trillion over 10 years. The biggest chunk, extending tax cuts for households making under $400,000 a year at an estimated cost of about $2.8 trillion. One point of departure, Harris would go further to increase the child tax credit for young children.
I'll not only restore that tax cut, but expand it. We will provide $6,000 in tax relief to families during the first year of a child's life,
as opposed to $3,600 under the Biden proposal and $2,000 under current law. In some ways, you can think of it as covering some potential lost wages for people who might have to take time off to care for a newborn.
Harris also proposes an expanded credit of $3,600 for children under 6 and $3,000 for older children. Altogether, her child tax credit plan would cost $1.2 trillion over the next decade. Harris also announced a substantial first-time homebuyer tax credit as part of a larger plan to address housing affordability.
while we work on the housing shortage. My administration will provide first-time home buyers with $25,000 to help with the down payment on a new home.
It's a $25,000 in down payment assistance as opposed to $10,000 first-time homebuyer credit that President Biden talked about. And that's roughly $100 billion, according to some estimates.
To raise revenue, Trump's plan focuses on taxing imported goods, particularly from China.
We're going to have 10 to 20% tariffs on foreign countries that have been ripping us off for years.
Trump loves tariffs. Tariffs basically are taxes on imported goods. The concern would be that middle-income households use a greater share of their income to purchase imported goods than very high-income households do.
Trump has also said he wants to repeal the clean energy credits in the Inflation Reduction Act passed by Democrats in 2022.
So we're going to...
Man, Biden, no. Did you see Biden's face, man? He was like, where am I?
Right. It looks like elder abuse, man. That's what I'm saying, bro. He's the president now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He's the president right now.
Oh, y'all signed it, guys. Oh.
terminate his Green New scam. It's going to be terminated, and we're going to end this war on American energy.
I think Republicans generally are opposed to the electric vehicle tax credit, certainly the generosity of electric vehicle tax credits.
If Trump imposes a 10% across the board tariff and a 60% tariff on Chinese goods,
There's some estimates out there that suggest that over a decade it could get to 3-ish trillion. I think there's some squishiness in trying to figure out how much money could actually come in there.
economists
Because ultimately what that would do is cause those goods to be less desired to be bought. But it's not like a bunch of them. I don't think GE makes any of their washers here in the States. I don't think
Right.
nobody makes them. So, maybe it might be coming from Taiwan or somewhere else, but if you just targeting China, like, they'll just ship their production somewhere else to another foreign country. You know what I'm saying? Are you gonna raise that to, now it's a whack-a-mole type thing, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right. I mean, he said 10% and 60, but yeah, I mean, you still are going to generate, if they're still going to move to get to 10% instead of the 60. So
right.
if your intention is to hurt China by that, you're still not going to have, I don't know, they're still not going to move. China has too much of a production.
They're not putting in the capital investment that it would need to take to bring all of that type of supply chain right back here to the United States. Like, the idea that that's gonna happen is bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
like it's BS, man. You know what I mean? I mean, if you look at like even in the automobile industry, right? They're not selling EVs, bro. They have slowed down, stopped a bunch of different, factories in the middle of them making the factories for these batteries and for these electrical vehicles or whatever. Like I think Ford just recently like hey, we're not making the F-150 Lightning. Like, they shut that whole portion of their plant down. You know what I'm saying?
Who can afford that?
Yeah,
You know what I'm
exactly,
saying?
man,
Like, that was a thing about nobody considered. As
mhm.
much as this might be, and this goes back to the economic stuff we were talking about. As much as this might be some nice pie in the sky idea, ultimately you can't afford to pay $50,000 for a truck base model when you make maybe, if you're lucky, $50,000 a year.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right, man. Yeah, it's crazy. Let's go back.
estimate Trump's tariffs would also raise the price of goods, costing $1,700 a year for the typical household. Harris's plan, on the other hand, veers away from tariffs and instead raises taxes on the top 3% of American households. Harris's tax plan, in line with Biden's most recent budget proposal, would raise nearly $5 trillion in revenue. A big part of that plan is bringing the corporate rate up to 28%.
The Biden administration, which she's adopted their plans, has basically said we don't want to extend any of those expiring tax cuts unless we pay for them.
Harris's plan to raise taxes on households making over $400,000 would bring in about $1.8 trillion in revenue. About a third would come from a new minimum income tax on people whose net worth is over $100 million.
The biggest one, and one that's most difficult to get through Congress, is this idea of a minimum tax of at least 25% on the very top people who have at least 100 million in net worth. And that basically taxes people based on their unrealized capital gains, their appreciated assets.
You still muted. Let me unmute you.
My bad.
Oh,
I said
you
that's a
muted.
key one. That's a key one, bro. Like that's the most drastic one, is that she's gonna see saying your unrealized gain. So let's say, for instance, you got a stock and it was $100, and then let's say it went up to 200, but you haven't sold. You know what I'm saying? When you
You just
sell it,
hold it.
that's the capital gains of 100. No, she's saying no. So let's say you just kept the stock, you didn't sell it. That 100 appreciated. You're going to have to pay 25%. So basically, you have to pay $25 of that 100 that you didn't realize. Like, that's never been done before. And so a lot of the stuff that I've been watching, they were saying like, yo, okay. Because she's saying, oh, the only people that will fall under this would be people, again, have over $100 million in wealth. But they was like, but if you look at the income tax, right? The income tax was on, when it initially was brought in 1916, it was only for rich people. Now everybody's paying it. You know what I'm saying? Like once you set precedent to do something like that that's drastic, then who's to say that they're gonna stop? Eventually they're gonna, the next campaign or whatever. Hey, I got this idea to do this. We're gonna drop the threshold down to 50 million to 1 million, 10 or whatever. And and as a crazy, the thing about it is that a lot of people, a lot of these retirees, they be having a lot of your average white person have 100 million in their 401k. You know what I mean? So like that's like, notice they don't ever talk about that shit. Kamala don't ever be on the, you know what I'm saying? They don't ever bring up that point because that was so unpopular, bro. Like that, yeah, that's crazy. You gonna tax unrealized gains? Like what?
Even with a full Democratic control of Congress, that's going to be a difficult sell.
Whoever wins the White House would also need their party to win the House and the Senate to keep their agendas on track.
If you have Trump with a Republican House and a Republican Senate, then there's going to be tax cuts.
Facing the prospect of a divided government, where one party doesn't control the White House and Congress, could cause either tax plan to go off the rails.
If everything expires at the end of 2025, there would be pretty sizable tax increases for most households. About 60% of Americans would see tax increases. It's something that people will be talking about a lot if we even get close to December 31st, 2025 without a deal.
Notice that I didn't hear Harris say that she's going to keep those for the lower economic brackets, Trump's tax cut. You know what I mean? Like for instance, like I believe the standard deduction for families is $14,000, and I think the individual is $7,000. If it rolls back, if they expire in 2025, it's going to roll back to what it was prior to that. So I guess what it was under Obama, right? Which would be a tax increase. You know what I'm saying? Or is she going to? Which she hasn't said anything about saying, hey, we're going to, obviously they want to increase the corporate tax rate back to 28%, but you didn't hear her say like, well, I'm going to keep in place those standard deductions, you know what I'm saying, those standard tax rates that were lower during the previous one for the, for the lower brackets, right? Like there's no mention of that. So you can only assume that that's not what she wants to do. So, yeah, it'll be interesting, dude.
Yeah.
However which way it go. I mean, we predicting that she's gonna lose anyway. This will be a moot point, but we will see.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about her campaign. She's hoping that she can just win off the goodwill of, she's a black person and people hate Trump and they want to see a black female president. So. She'll be on and it'll be no problem. That's really all because there's nothing to what she's saying. There's nothing to it at all. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing, absolutely nothing to it. So.
Yeah, man. Well, like I was telling you, I got about 3 more minutes. I'm anticipating a call coming through at 4:30.
Okay. I might still go over the Green Party stuff just a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to come back. If I'm still on, you want to come back?
Yeah.
You can, I definitely let you back in. Or if you want me to just bring you out, I can take you out. And then you can message me when you back if you want to do that or whatever.
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that.
Okay, but here's the Green Party, the economic justice and sustainability. So, I mean, obviously, even with the Green Party, there are things that they support that I disagree with. But overall, here's just some bullet points from A to N. I'll go over their bullet points. Ecological economics, eco-socialism, measuring economic health, curbing corporate power, livable income, fair taxation, local economic development, small business and the self-employed, work and job creation, banking and insurance reform, bulletin 1, insurance reform or a bullet 2, prohibit corporate insurance fraud. 3, broader financial industry reforms. 4, reduce excessive executive pay. So J, pension reform. K, antitrust enforcement. L, advanced technology and defense conversion. Point 1, telecommunications. Point 2, open source software. 3, nanotechnology. M, national debt. N, monetary reform, greening the dollar. So, I mean, you see they have a list of things. Here's their introduction to their economic and economic justice sustainability plan. So it's pretty long and in depth. And they break down all of the different points that we just talked about from A to N with all the individual bullets. But I'll start reading it and then we'll kind of just check it out. So it says, green economics is rooted in ecological economics. Our economy should serve us and our planet. Our economy should reflect and respect the diverse, delicate ecosystems of our planet. Our current economic system is gravely flawed. It is unjust and unsustainable because it is premised on endless economic growth and destruction of nature. Our market economy, by externalizing the environmental and social cost of greenhouse gas emissions, is creating the greatest market failure in history, climate change, and its devastating effects. Our government's top economic goal, increasing gross domestic product, impels us to perpetually intensify our resource use and environmental destruction. And I want to stop here just because I think this is an important thing for people to realize. When we look at the economy, since you were talking about like an economics class, it's important to understand that the way that we judge economic health in this country, the way the current model that we have judges economic health is not based on stability or longevity, but it is on the premise of, here, it says it here, endless economic growth, right? So essentially what that means is year to year, corporations want to see about a 2.5 to 4% increase year on year, right, in their revenue. And so when you see those types of things, when a company has that as their goal, they don't take into account any other external factors. So let's look at, me and my wife were in the car and we were listening to something about reading. And we're talking about reading and how reading is in the US, how bad it is because of a reading around the late 70s or the early 70s, late 60s. A researcher, an education researcher, moved away from, he had a theory, he moved away from phonics as a model and started doing something called cueing, which took reading to, like, when you see people who say they read through sight words, where you learn the shape of words and you're supposed to look at the context and memorize what a word is without actually learning how to break that word down and actually read it phonetically. And they were saying that during COVID, because so many parents were doing schoolwork with their kids at home, they got a chance to see what their kids were learning. And so there's an increase in schools and school districts going back to teaching phonics at school instead of the sight word thing. Now, teachers have made millions of dollars, or educators who have created learning materials for this cueing type of reading and sight word reading have created all these different types of materials that make millions of dollars. And they're even coming to admit that maybe they were wrong, right? They're not saying that they were wrong. They don't want to be financially liable for anything, but they're saying maybe they were wrong in a nutshell. But what has happened, another component of that, the reason I bring this up, another component of that is they're saying there's a decrease in education-related technologies, right? That's what they're noticing. There's been a decrease. And what they're trying to say is that is a result of people no longer are being burnt out. They're being disengaged from computers and all this Zoom and Teams after post-COVID. But when you think about it, when you talk about it, when you actually work that process out, what happens is when in 2020, 2021, and even somewhat in 22, kids had to go to school online. So you had an increase in digital learning or digital learning software or digital learning programs out of necessity that you don't have now, right? But the market doesn't say, well, you know, this was a boom cycle because of, you know, some extenuating circumstance that can't be replicated or cannot expect to be replicated on a consistent basis. We need to make this happen next year. It didn't happen. You have lost money. Now you have to figure out ways to generate that revenue that you had during you know, what was considered by the majority of the public and the media and governments around the world as the largest or greatest health event in modern times, right? I have a sister. She used to be a manager at a Champs, and after tax return time, she had a lot of customers who come in and buy shoes. And so, you know, let's say it was February, or no, you know, February, March, April. April is tax. Let's say it's April. People get tax returns. They come to buy shoes, and let's say she made X amount of dollars in April. Then they want her to come back in May and have that same amount of revenue. Well, you can't, because everybody's already spent their tax money, right? But the company doesn't see that. They just see, hey, you made all this money. How come you're not making that same growth now? So our model that we have in this country is just it's unsustainable because it's built on growth, right? A company isn't successful because they've maintained a consistent consumer base or consistent employment, or they've been around for 100 years, or their supply network is great, or their distribution network is solid. None of that, right? They've got a clear vision. They've got brand recognition. None of that. What they want to see is if you made $100, I'm just using a small number so we can get to the percentages. If you made $100 one year for revenue, we want you to make 102 the next year. And then we want you to make, it'd be, what would that be? 2% would be about 100 of 102. It would still be another $2, so about 104. And you would keep increasing year on year on year, irrespective of any external factors. So I took an economics class. I talked to my teacher about it. I said, well, why is that? Why do they think that endless growth is an attainable goal, right? And one of the things we talked about, and I hadn't really considered, is because they expect population growth to increase. So long as people continue to have babies and there are people who continue to be born, you expect that this population of people will increase. And so there are more people. There should be more people who are able to participate in the products or goods and services that we provide. And that just doesn't make sense because life doesn't work like that. It's not a model. There are boom and bust cycles in births and deaths, employments, and external or geopolitical factors that influence all this stuff. But this is how our economic model is. And so, you know, as a result, we're screwed up. So let's see. Green economic policy places value not just on material wealth, but on the things which truly make life worth living. Our health, our relationships, our communities, our environment, and building peace and justice throughout our nation and the world. We aim to maximize our quality of life with a minimum of consumption. We aspire to less, quote, stuff, end quote, but more happiness. We propose a shift away from materialism to help people live more meaningful lives as we save the planet from climate change and ever larger mountains of waste. We need to acquire the ability to distinguish between need and greed. And this is at odds fundamentally with the American financial structure, right? The same way we criticize the I was going to say the Blue Party again, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. I mean, you know, you're not going to be able to enact any of these changes without completely upending the system we have. The difference with the Green Party is that they fully understand that and they're on board with it, right? This is why the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have a have your cake and eat it too approach. Because what they would like to do, they would like to have you believe that you can say, you know, we want to still be a capitalist society, free market. We don't want to have any imposition on corporations and things like that, or the opportunity for the market to dictate what happens. But they simultaneously want to have all these manipulations or constraints on the market. Green Party does not say that. The Green Party understands that we need a fundamental shift in the way we do things in order for the world, and specifically this country, to work for everybody, right? The Green Party, let's see, we need to acquire the ability to distinguish between need and greed. And you know, again, like I talked about with how our economy is built off of continued growth. This is why you have what do they call that? Obsolescence baked into is a term for it, but it's
that's you're right. It's obsolescence.
Yeah, where you have obsolescence baked into products. Like I went to a cider mill yesterday with my family. They got a cider mill with the press and the turbine that was built in 1897 in Ohio, still in operation.
Right.
And here you get an iPhone from 2 years ago and it's broke. You know what I'm saying? It's planned obsolescence is what I think.
Yeah,
it's called.
I think like what did the McNamara come up with that? It was someone in the automobile industry, I think, came up with that.
Probably.
Yeah,
probably. Because how do you justify making a new model of a car every year?
Every year, yeah.
Except that you because nobody needs a brand new car every year. There's just legitimately no reason, but you increase consumption. We must also end the colossal waste of taxpayer funds for armaments and war to reduce our nation's federal debt and fund environmental and social needs. Greens intend to provide a green job to anyone who wants one. We support using the tax system to bring more equality to our nation. Rising income inequality makes us all poorer in myriad ways. More equal societies are happier, healthier, safer, and greener. Greens support strong local economies and regional trade. The best model of economic security is for a community and region to be largely self-sufficient in the production of its necessities. We support not the corporate control of, quote, free trade, end quote, which through the machinations of the World Trade Organization place the enrichment of multinational corporations above the level of national laws, but, quote, fair trade, end quote, which protects communities, labor, consumers, and the environment. Local economic vibrancy and the regional trade keep more money in the community and the region rather than going to distant corporate headquarters. This is the most sensible model for economic security. Greens will change the legal design of the corporation so that it does not maximize profit at the expense of the environment, human rights, public health, workers, or the communities in which it operates. We believe the giant multinational corporation is the world's most potent force for environmental and social destruction. Unlike other political parties in the modern era, the Green Party views economics not as an end in itself, but as a service to community development through the building and strengthening of community bonds that constitute the social fabric. Greens are defenders of the commons, the vast trove of wealth owned by the people, the social and tangible assets we inherit from generations past. Most people living in this country yearn for a more vibrant and lively commons, such as a richer community life, more parks and protected wilderness, clean air and water, more silence, better access to information and knowledge, and a more nourishing culture. We must stop big business from undermining and stealing our commons, our common wealth, such as our public forests and minerals, the fruits of federal research and public airwaves and the internet. And so this is a direct opposition to opening up more public lands for home development.
Right, exactly. Exactly, man.
But I mean, when you listen to that, you know, that sounds like a plan that neither of the other two parties had, right? The Republicans didn't have any information about their vision. The Democrats didn't have any information about their vision. Trump's plan looked like a pamphlet. You know what I mean? It looked like, you know what I'm saying? It looked like a pamphlet.
Looked like a high school report.
Yeah.
You know,
if you vote for me for class president, we won't go to school, but on Mondays and Tuesdays, we'll get ice cream for lunch. You know what I'm saying? Right. Kamala Harris is like,
it's cool.
Kamala Harris is like, if you vote for me, you know, I'm your friend. You know me. I'm your home girl. I have the best parties. You know, I know where all the fun drugs are. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
nothing. And the Green Party is that kid. Like, I got a real plan. You stupid idiots. Like, I got a plan to make the school better. And it's, you know, obviously we're biased, but
right.
we have alerted y'all that we have a bias, so it's not like we're deceiving you in any way.
Right.
But let's see. I don't have to read every bullet point.
Yeah.
I want to try to go to.
Man.
I want to try to go because they got A through N, and so. But I want to try to get to if I can get down to what their
what's their monetary policy? Oh.
Yeah, monetary reform, greening the dollar. You want to see that one?
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, you can scroll down. I can't see it. You gotta.
No, I know. I went to try to see what the what you call it, the so here it is right here. Monetary reform, greening the dollar, a green public money future. So let's see. What's this national debt? Okay. So in monetary reform, a green public money future. The crisis in our financial system makes it imperative that we restructure our monetary system. The present system of privatized money issuance and control has resulted in the misdirection of our financial resources to speculation, toxic financial instruments, and loans that create huge profits and wealth for the corporate few, but inadequate income and jobs for the common people. It is both possible and necessary for Congress to take back its exclusive constitutional power to create our money, Article 1, Section 8, without the creation of debt, and assume the responsibility to spend this money directly into circulation to fund public benefits outlined in the federal budget. Only with a public money system can the government direct our national wealth to the needs of the people through their local and state governments. A public money system will enable millions of good livelihoods, provide sufficient income, shrink the debt burden, and begin to close the wealth gap. Public money has not been issued since greenbacks, introduced by President Lincoln in 1862, and circulating as public money until 1971 under Nixon. To reverse the private control of issuing our nation's money, to reverse the immoral and undeserved concentration of national wealth and income resulting from that private control, to place control over money within a more equitable public system of governmental checks and balances, and to end the regular recurrence of severe and disruptive financial crises that mark the boom and bust cycles of capitalism, which we have talked about.
We spoke to that.
The Green Party proposes the following 3 public money solutions to be enacted together. 1, nationalize the 12 Federal Reserve banks and transfer administrative functions of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors to a Bureau of the Treasury. All money created under the nationalized Federal Reserve System will be treated as publicly issued money. The private creation of money will cease with the reckless practices that have led to recurring economic crises. 2, all new money will be issued as a debt-free, permanently circulating asset by the federal government. A new public monetary authority will be established under the Department of Treasury to scientifically determine the amount of money that can safely be created for the national economy to avoid inflation or deflation. The monetary authority will be empowered with full autonomy and independence to avoid political influence. Although banks will continue as financial intermediaries, lending publicly issued money at interest and performing traditional banking functions, they will no longer be allowed to create money, ending what is known as fractional reserve banking. Specific guidance for a progressive publicly controlled monetary authority can be found in a bill already entered into the Congress, H.R. 2990, 112th Congress, National Emergency Employment Defense Act of 2011, NEED Act. 3, all new money will be spent into circulation by the U.S. government as authorized by Congress for public purpose. This includes a 21st century infrastructure, including education and healthcare. Per capita spending guidelines for new money will ensure a fair distribution across the nation, creating good livelihoods, reinvigorating local economies, and funding government at all levels. Newly created money will also be distributed directly to state and local governments.
That would be transformational, very transformational, because it's cutting out the Fed, it's cutting out the middleman. Because people don't know that the Federal Reserve is a private entity. It's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
you know. I had a video talking about it, man. Monetary policy. It's about 6 minutes. It's about 6 minutes if you want to go into it or not.
Yeah. I got time. But
Right.
it's funny because like when you sit and you think about it, like that was Andrew Jackson's whole thing was like getting rid of the central bank. That was like
Yeah.
tenet besides killing Indians. Andrew Jackson was concerned with getting rid of the central
Right.
bank. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like that was the two things he did. He spent
Yeah.
his whole career getting rid of the central bank, and it came back again 100 years later.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it. Jimmy Dore has a video. The guy used to work for the Treasury or the Federal Reserve. I can't remember. He worked in the government. Maybe it wasn't the Treasury or the Federal Reserve, but he worked in the government. And somebody was asking him like, why does the U.S. have to issue currency as debt? Like, why can't we just give the money to ourselves? Why do we have to go through a third party?
Right.
And like, he was trying to answer the question. I see your video. He was trying to answer the question. And like, dude was answering like he had never heard anybody ask that before. Like, wow, that makes
like it was.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Like-
because they don't teach it, man. They don't teach it in school. They only teach it one way. Like just like with economics, man, they only teach capitalism. They never, who was it? It was the guy. His name is he's a famous I think, man, let me look him up. He's a famous economist, a socialist economist, right? And he's like, yo, I went to some of the prestigious, schools.
Oh, Wolf, Richard Wolf.
Richard Wolf, right? Richard Wolf. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And he's like, not once did we even have a class on Marx or, you know what I'm saying, or socialism or, you know what I mean, like, that political economy, like not one time. You would think you would have at least one to be like, okay, because compared to two, like it's just one way is being taught. He said everything he learned, he had to go on his own to figure out. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's just wild. But let me know when you want me to play it or not.
You can play it. So I got the video from Jimmy Dore too. I might
You'll
try
play
to.
that too,
I'll send
yeah.
it to you. So don't play it on mine because.
Okay, yeah. We gotta just put it in the
But yeah,
private.
you
chat, I
can-
guess.
Yeah. But
I've made a lot of videos about monetary policy, but this one, I'm going to completely explain everything you need to know using this. First, let's do an overview. The money market graph that you've already learned shows the supply and the demand for money, and that sets the equilibrium nominal interest rate. And the interest rate determines how much investment spending and consumer spending on interest-sensitive consumer goods takes place in the economy. So if the money supply increases, the interest rate's going to fall, and that will lead to more investment and more spending. And if the money supply decreases, then interest rates will go up, and that'll lead to less investment and less spending. And this process of controlling the money supply to affect interest rates is called monetary policy. Okay, so how does the central bank change the money supply? Well, there's three ways. They could twist it, pull it, or bop it. Stay with me, it's gonna make sense. First, we have to differentiate between the monetary base and the money supply. The monetary base is made up of bank reserves, which are not part of the money supply, and currency in circulation, which is part of the money supply. And the rest of the money supply is made up of checkable deposits. This is money in checking accounts that you can use to buy goods and services. And the ratio of the monetary base to the money supply is the money multiplier. So if the reserve requirement was 20%, making the money multiplier 5, the money supply would be 5 times bigger than the monetary base. Okay, now that you have that down, let's talk.
So as we just read, the Greens are saying get rid of that whole process. I think they still will have a central bank, but it's not, based. It'll be in the public though, in the public domain, it'll be controlled.
it'll be like under the Treasury.
Right, it'll be part of the Treasury. You know what I'm saying? Directly. Like, why have a middleman when you don't need one? You know what I mean?
Right.
And it still will have the same focus on keeping inflation down. That's what basically the Federal. Well, he's gonna go into what the Federal Reserve does.
About monetary policy. Let's assume there's a recession, so GDP is down and unemployment is high, and the central bank wants to increase the money supply to decrease interest rates and increase spending. Now, to do that, to change the money supply, the central bank can do 3 things. The first one is changing the reserve requirement. Instead of requiring banks to hold 20% in reserves, they can tell banks to hold only 10% in reserves. So if someone deposits $100 of cash into the bank doesn't need to hold $20, it only needs to hold 10. So the bank's excess reserves, the amount they're actually going to loan out, is $90 instead of just $80. And when the bank loans it out, that's when the whole money creation process takes place. It ends up in somebody's pocket. That person puts in another bank. The bank holds 10%, loans it out to somebody else. It makes its way back in the banking system. That keeps happening over and over again. That initial cash deposit of $100 can generate up to $900 of new money. But notice that's way bigger than the $400 it could have been if the reserve requirement was 20%. The point here is that the central bank can increase or decrease the money supply by changing the reserve requirement and twisting the rules for the bank. They're changing the money supply by changing that reserve requirement and changing the money multiplier. Twist it. Now, the second thing the central bank can do to change the money supply is to pull it. That's the discount rate. Remember that the central bank doesn't have the authority or the ability to tell private banks what interest rates to charge. They just can't tell commercial banks what to charge for mortgages or student loans or car loans. But there is one interest rate that the central bank does have direct control over. It's the discount rate. It's the rate they charge banks for loans. Again, let's assume the economy is doing poorly and the central bank wants to increase the money supply and decrease interest rates. To do this, they can decrease the discount rate, making it cheaper and easier for banks to borrow from the central bank, and that'll lead to more loans. For the banks, now that making loans is more profitable than owning other assets, they're going to loan out more money. The banks are going to cash out those other assets, and that'll increase the monetary base, and when they loan that money out, that's going to increase the money supply. And that increased money supply will decrease interest rates and lead to more spending, and that's monetary policy.
I think that's enough.
Well, I mean, hey, I like economics anyway. But the thing I think is important, because he didn't say it, and I'm not saying he doesn't say it, I don't know. But that new money that's created is all fictitious. This is why if you have a bank run, the whole thing collapses.
Right.
Because if the people say, hey, I want my $900, there's not $900 there. There's that same $100. The expectation is through loans or whatever, you're generating more money, maybe through business expenditures or whatever, maybe, through interest payments, but that's not money. That's not physical money. It's IOUs. This is how the whole system is a house of cards, right? And so it gets out of control because of what he's saying. And even with the whole manipulation of interest rates, if the Federal Reserve says, hey, this is what's happened to us since 2008, where you just had artificially low interest rates.
They were at zero.
Banks have been able to get money at zero.
Right. Yeah, they were getting the money zero. They weren't paying anything to the Federal Reserve. Yeah, it was.
And they were giving it to their corporations and the corporate friends and stuff at a very similar rate.
Right.
So what that did, it allowed for, it's a type. It's called the. I want to say it's called the Ricardo effect or something. But essentially, what happened? It's a Cantillon effect. What it does, if I'm not mistaken, what it does is when you give money to only segments of an economy, before you give it to the rest, you create this process wherein that segment of the economy is able to monopolize or capitalize on whatever economic situation is occurring. So corporations were able to buy up property. So you look at like Vanguard and BlackRock and all that, they were able to buy up homes. So that's why you see so many homes that are owned by these private corporations because they bought them up for real cheap because they had all the money. They got all the money at 0%, like you're saying, or near 0%. The average American person didn't get that. They still had to pay, an interest rate. And when the economy is doing bad, even if it's a low interest rate, your job, real wages haven't increased since like 75. So, your wages aren't even keeping up with inflation and you don't have that money to spend or to spare. But yeah.
Yeah. And notice that neither the major parties are addressing that. You know what I'm saying? They're not addressing that issue because they could make that illegal for these private equity firms and banks, really it's private equity firms, really, like BlackRock and those of the like to do that. And Vanguard, like to, what I'm saying? Like, hey, if you can only deal in commercial property. You can't deal in domestic and residential property like that. You know what I mean? You want, but that goes to show that the fact that that's what they're putting their money in goes to show where this country is going all because they're basically making everybody be a renter. You know what I'm saying? Pretty much like how it was back in the days when you had people who were serfs. You know what I mean? Back in medieval Europe, you know what I mean? Like, hey, The reason why they were serfs is because, hey, you know, the Lord had all the land. You had to live somewhere. You know what I mean? So you living on my land, so you know you got to do this and do that and do this, and you know you have to write a first night and all that.
Right,
hey,
right.
You getting married? Oh, I got a right to get into that booty before you do. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Right.
I mean that's pretty much like, I mean, think about it.
Where we headed?
Listen, look at, you know what I'm saying, the up trucker. Everybody got OnlyFans. You know what I'm saying? Like mass prostitution.
We talked about that like 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
When you look at and what that says about a society.
About
and
exactly.
And we was talking about how it was oversaturated years ago.
Right. And it's only
What
gotten
you gonna
worse
start-
and worse and worse. And then the music is doing it. You know what I'm saying? You seeing in all the music, the entertainment, you know what I'm saying, influencing people to engage in it. That's why, like, this whole thing against Diddy, dude, is just ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? As if like these mofos aren't doing it. I mean, all you got to do is go to Reddit, because you know what I'm saying. You know, like believe you me, there's a bunch of people that enjoy, for whatever reason, being cucks. You know what I mean? Because that's basically what Diddy was into. And you can go to Reddit, and you know what I'm saying. And there's plenty of people out there doing that, man. You know, maybe they're not having a, you know, they bringing people across. Maybe some of them are going across state. But
I mean, it's somebody like, for everybody.
Yeah, bro. Like, you know what I mean. You know, and yeah. But anyway.
But this, I mean, that's a situation, right?
Right.
The two major parties are trying to operate within the framework of the current system and trying to pretend that they can offer you an alternative.
Right.
You cannot operate within the framework and present a legitimate alternative. But I sent that video in the private chat.
You did
that Jimmy Dore video. I think it's only like 6 minutes or so. It's not long.
Okay, hold on.
But they said he's a Biden economic advisor.
Got it.
He works in the, you know, he or at least he did. He worked in the administration. But you know, this is the way. Like I said earlier, you're trying to paper over. At least the Green Party acknowledges that without legitimate changes to the system that we're under, you're not going to have any changes. That's 12 minutes.
Hey, we'll see you May 11th in Denver, Colorado. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. I came across this clip, and it's super interesting. So this guy is Jared Bernstein. He is the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, and it's the main agency that advises Biden on economic policy. And I wanted to play this for you and get your take.
The U.S. government can't go bankrupt because we can print our own money.
It obviously begs the question, why exactly are we borrowing in a currency that we print ourselves? I'm waiting for someone to stand up and say, why do we borrow our own currency in the first place?
Like you said, they print the dollar. So why does the government even borrow?
Well, again, some of this stuff gets, some of the language that some of the language and concepts are just confusing. I mean, the government definitely prints money, and it definitely lends that money, which is why the government definitely prints money, and then it lends that money by selling bonds. Is that what they do? They
sounds like me.
They sell bonds. Yeah, they sell bonds, right? So they sell bonds, and people buy the bonds and lend them the money. Yeah. So a lot of times, at least to my ear with MMT, the language and the concepts can be kind of unnecessarily confusing, but there is no question that the government prints money, and then it uses that money to yeah, I guess I can't really talk. I don't get it. I don't know what they're talking about. Like, because it's like the government clearly prints money. It does it all the time, and it clearly borrows. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this debt and deficit conversation. So I don't think there's anything confusing there.
What is happening? The whole thing he's confused about, just as I am. And so if we print our own money, why don't we just print $34 trillion and pay off our debt right now? Why do we have to borrow money from the Fed? Can you explain that to us as an economics professor?
Absolutely. And it wouldn't take very long, although we may not be able to do it today. First of all, Jared Bernstein, is it embarrassing? Absolutely, you're correct. To have a person in that position unable to answer the question is exposing what is normally very carefully hidden. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the woman asking the key question there is a professor of economics that I know real well. Stephanie Kelton is her name. She was the economic advisor to Bernie Sanders. This is a debate among the people who run the monetary system of the United States. It's very important to understand that throughout history, the people who have been kings, queens, emperors, czars, you name it, have often used the fact that they print the money for their society to do whatever they want. So, for example, if the people don't want to have a war, usually the government has to go to the Congress or the Parliament and get a vote saying, okay, we'll raise the money to let you fight a war. Suppose they won't do it. What does the emperor do? Says, well, I print the money, so I'll make a war by paying for it by printing the money. Is there a limit to that? No. The government has the power to print the money. So they may print it, and if they print a lot of it just to get things done they want, you could flush the economy with money, and you know what you might get if you did that? An inflation, because the money is there being pumped into the economy, and the goods and services that the money will buy are not coming in as fast as the money is, and up go the prices as everybody with money outbids everybody else to get the scarce goods. So over history, we have created institutions that limit the ability of the government just to print the money. And here's what we did in this country. We set up the Federal Reserve, and here's how it works. The government, the president, can't print anything. Only the Federal Reserve can print the money. That's why on your bill it says Federal Reserve note, because they are the ones who do it. And the only way they get to do it is if the government borrows money from the people, issues a bond, a document, an IOU that the government owes the people it borrows from, and then the Federal Reserve has the right to go into the market and buy those bonds from the people who got them by lending to Washington and to the government. And the Federal Reserve has the right to print the money. So again, the money is printed, but not by the government, the president and the Congress, but by a separate entity, which is controlled by the banks in this country. And so they have the veto power over how much money the government can issue. That's all this is. It's a fight between the government and the biggest banks in the country, who together have to agree on how much money is going to be pumped in, because they don't trust the president or the monarch to make that decision himself. That's all. The details are not important. That's what we have. And that's how the system has worked.
So you're saying like that latest, say, $100 billion we sent to Ukraine. So the Fed had to print that money. Who tells?
Well, first of all, the government has to borrow it.
Where do they
send the money? Send the money to the Ukraine. The government issues bonds, and it goes out into the market globally. And it says, we, the government of the United States, we're borrowing an extra $61 billion because we want to throw it away in Ukraine. Okay, then around the world, people, banks, companies, whoever wants to, lends the money to the government, U.S., and gets that $61 billion worth of bonds. Then, and this is important to understand, often within minutes, they turn around and sell that U.S. government bond to the Federal Reserve. What does the Federal Reserve pay that money for that? By printing it. So the Federal Reserve prints the money, uses it to buy the bonds that the government sold to finance the war in Ukraine, or to finance giving money to Israel, or whatever else they're doing.
And that's how we get the national debt. So when
that's right, and that keeps accumulating.
So
the only big mistake Jared Bernstein made was to think it didn't matter, because it does. The more the debt of the United States, the more we have to pay taxes to pay the interest to all those people who have that debt. That's still real. And you and I are going to pay more for a beer or for a rubber tire or in our income tax or every other way, because that debt is an asset for the people who lend to the government, and they want to be paid on it, and they're going to make damn sure that they are. And by the way, right now, as we're talking, the debt of the United States is costing in interest almost as much as the entire defense budget of the United States. Don't tell anyone that this isn't important. It's crucial. And with our interest rates staying high and our government borrowing trillions every year, we are in a situation that within a very few years is going to be unsustainable, and nothing is more damning of our system than what I just said is not being discussed, neither by Trump nor by Biden.
We wish we hadn't lost that $2 trillion that maybe we could have chipped away at a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. I know you have to go, so
I do.
I appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking to you again. Everyone, Professor Richard Wolff, everybody check out his show, Economic Update, Democracy at Work on YouTube. Check out his book, The System of the Sickness. And thanks again. We'll see you soon.
Okay, though. Take care, Jimmy.
Bye-bye.
I was watching somebody, I forget who it was, but they were talking about it was his show. It was, well, you know how they have a lot of those companies like Invest in Gold or whatever. And the guy he's a CEO of a company like an Invest in Gold company, and Jimmy has him on sometimes. He invests in gold and stuff. And he was saying like our economy doesn't work like it's supposed to because it's not subject to the normal factors of of what you would consider like capitalism, where if the market says this, we're not able to allow the market to do this because the Federal Reserve manipulates interest rates. So like we said, they kept them low for a long time, maybe too long. And now they had them up for like a year, but then they just cut them, 50 basis points?
Yeah, 50% or 50 of 1%. Yeah.
So they were saying, he was saying like that hurts the economy too, because you don't allow big businesses to fail. So you're artificially propping those businesses up, and it continues to compound the issues. And so that's the thing we're dealing with too. So Richard Wolff broke it down. He broke down the reasons why this is happening. And in theory, it sounds like a good idea, but if the banks are at the head of the situation and not Congress, right? Because the Federal Reserve, Congress doesn't have the authority to audit the Federal Reserve. The president doesn't have the authority to audit the Federal Reserve. Like nobody has any oversight over the Federal Reserve. It's all self-contained. So, in theory, it's all good. But if they're still colluding together to do what they're doing, or if it involves some type of manipulation that still ultimately hurts the working people, the working class, or the average American citizen, then whatever you expected to gain from taking control. And you think about it, why would you have a system where the president and the Congress manipulate the financial system in a way that benefits them, but there's no repercussions for it? And then you think a private entity controlling the monetary policy of a nation would be a better alternative, when if you look at it by all accounts, it's the same. When you never see the Federal Reserve tell the government no. You never see them say, hey, no, the interest rates got to stay high, or they got to move up. Like, they work hand in glove. So what is the actual counterweight to whatever the federal government is doing on this hand by having this separation of powers? Like, what is the actual, besides having some shadowy figures control, because they are private banks, so they're funded and backed by groups of wealthy individuals. You know what I'm saying? It's just all weird. It's all weird.
Versus, like I said, you have a middleman when you can design a system to where you don't, and then but the question then would be, will we, who will be making decisions? Like if it was in the form of government, do you trust? You know what I'm saying? Like, will something be done? Will the government actually listen to what the people want? Like, for instance, what's going on in Gaza right now, what's happening, over in the Middle East. Most Americans are against it. You know what I'm saying? But is that stopping any of the major people from, the major parties from from doing it. You know what I mean? You know, because again, they're not beholden to us. They're beholden to the, like you said, those special interests and donors, which which profit from all of this going on. You know, that's the problem, and you know, ultimately, that's why why we condone going to a third party that at least has a different, you know what I'm saying, calculus. You know what I'm saying, like that realizes that, hey, you know, and this duopoly system is not going to change. It's going to only just continue to get worse and continue to go, you know, continue to go down this course. So yeah, that's why it kills me when you know, I'm on, you know, social media and I have people telling me, oh, you know, when Trump gets in there, it's going to be Armageddon, as if we're not already in Armageddon, and as if the Democrats are really a viable choice and option for something different. You know, it's not. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and just to highlight that, Iran launched an attack on Israel. What, about 2 hours ago now?
Yeah,
2.5, maybe 3 hours ago now.
Right.
Launched 200 rockets or 200 missiles. They, from what I was seeing on Telegram, they used some hypersonic missiles. They targeted an air base. Looks like they might have targeted some infrastructure. So showed only maybe 2 injuries reported on RT, but on Telegram, I saw some reporting saying that they appeared to be targeting like infrastructure and not necessarily people. So we don't know where this goes, right? We don't know what the next step is. It looks like Biden, they said Biden and Harris are in the Situation Room and they're prepared to send U.S. troops to defend Israel
More, because they're already there. There's going to, it would be more.
So, I mean, is this the beginning of World War III, or is this, you know, is this the end of the situation? We don't know, because Benjamin Netanyahu would love nothing more than to continue these escalations so that he can retain power, because he knows if everything is calm, he's out of office, because there's so much protest in Israel. So many of the Israeli people are against his presidency or whatever. But you know, we don't know. So I don't know if you have anything more you want to kind of go over, or you want to any other videos. But
no, I'm good, man. We've been going at it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
I think we thoroughly you know, looked at the two you know, all 3 parties that are running for president. Or the 3 ones that we talk about. There's a couple of other ones, but
yeah. But I mean, they're just the viability of those candidates.
Yeah,
it didn't really. We didn't see a point to really getting into it with them. Obviously, if you
they don't have ballot
or
access.
any of the other candidates, whether it's the Libertarians or, you know, what the Constitutionalists or the Peace and Freedom or the Taxpayer Party, whichever other parties you want to support, you should go and you should definitely go and research them and kind of see, you know, what you think about their political policies or their economic policies. But this is just one aspect. The Green Party has a robust reparations policy that you can look at extensively on their website. I encourage everybody who's interested in reparations to go and check it out. So, you know, here, I'll pull it.
The thing tonight's the vice president debate, I believe.
Is it? I didn't even know that.
I want to say it's tonight, vice president debate.
I always do stuff on weird nights like Tuesday, so you're probably right.
Yeah, because it's, you know, not Monday Night Football. Yep, it's today.
Oh, you want to know a
show? I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah,
I'm sure. You know, we could talk to the other guys and see if they want to do something. I don't know. I mean, you know, we can see. I ain't impressed either way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna move anything, man. It looks like it's not gonna be another presidential one. Trump pretty much said, you know, he's not doing another one. That could only hurt him.
Right, because from what it appears, like what we talked about, it appears that he's gotten enough of a benefit from the one he did, enough of a bump, or it didn't hurt him so much, and Harris didn't get the bump she hoped to get. So like I said, that whole whatever they thought they were going to get, she wants another debate to get another shot at appealing to the American people, and Trump's not going to do it.
Right.
So, this is where we are with whoever we got.
Yeah.
And that is what it is. But
there's another Candace
right.
episode. Candace got.
Oh yeah, it's a new one. It's another one.
Yeah.
Because see, I didn't get to watch the one you sent yesterday. I got to check it out. I'm gonna check it out after I get off of here. It's interesting, man. That is interesting. Like I told you, and this is kind of a this is different than what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But her and her sister don't look like they got the same set of parents to me. Like her sister looks like an Indian woman.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's one of the things. I'm like, did her mom cheat on her dad? Is that why they got divorced? They don't really go into any details about it. But her sister looks like a full-blooded Indian woman.
Yeah, she does.
You know what I'm saying? If they got the same parents, either that means her dad is an Indian, or I don't know what. Because they don't look. Her sister looks like an Indian. Her sister does not look like half white or any white in her at all. She looks like an Indian woman. So I thought that was peculiar. But yeah, this definitely, I ain't a fan of Candace Owens at all, and I think it's interesting that she's trying to kind of take this about face. She had a tweet where somebody was saying, something about how she's basically speaking out about Israel and the whole situation with Gaza, and that's caused her a lot of trouble with her show and with her YouTube channel and stuff. And she was saying. But you could say stuff like that about black people or something, or you could say negative things about black people. She said something like, "Yeah, it's encouraged," and all that goes to show you is that she knows very well what she was doing, right? That she was trying to ride the wave to tear down black people in order to benefit herself or to edify her own channel. And it's just like we don't ever, at least I try not to attack anybody for any reason. Obviously. I'll attack your ideas, but I'm not about to just sit here and tear down black people. I'm not about to sit here and tear down white people. It's like none of this is personal. Even if I disagree with your political motives, I'll attack your political motives. I might attack what appear to be your intentions through your motives or your political ideology, but I'm not going to sit here and just, you because of XYZ, sit here and publicly tear you down. That's just not what I'm doing. So for somebody to be willing to admit that they essentially did that, is that leaves a bad taste in my mouth, because that just shows no integrity, that you'd be willing to tear people down for personal gain. But I guess that's it. So
yeah,
let me see.
All right, man. Well, it was another episode down, man. We'll probably I'm sure the news cycle will bring us back to this again.
Oh yeah,
for sure. All right then, guys.
Okay.
All right, man. Everybody in the audience, those who came or watching later on, Peace and Reparations. We have no permanent friends. We have no permanent enemies. Only permanent interests. All right. Peace and Reparations.
Peace.